Hey, this is Brett Hawke on the Greg Bennett Show. Any questions?
Welcome to the Greg Bennett Show, presented by Any Question. I'm your host, Greg Bennett, and I've just finished a wonderful conversation with Mr. Brett Hawke. Brett's a 5-time Olympian, 2 times as an athlete and 3 times as a coach. And during his coaching days, he coached César Cielo to the 50-meter gold medal at the 2008 Olympic Games in Beijing. And Brett's background from being athlete to coach to #1 podcaster in the world in the swimming realm with his podcast Inside with Brett Hawke. Anything he does, this guy, he turns into gold. And he's just an amazing human being. He now works with me at Any Question. He's the head of expert acquisition, and we talk about some of the remarkable people that he's bringing on to the platform at Any Question. And in this episode, there's just so much mindset knowledge that you can learn. Brett's mind is really quite incredible, how he's just a fierce competitor, that he doesn't take no, that he rejects self-doubt, or he lets it fuel him. But just a really wonderful episode that I think you'll leave feeling pretty pumped and inspired about the world. Brett is incredibly authentic and vulnerable in this show, and I think you'll get a lot out of this one. You can go ask Brett any follow-up questions if you go to anyquestion.com/Brett Hawke, and you can go ask Brett any questions you like. He's very good at getting back to you. And go check out the Any Question platform now with almost 700 different people with expertise across 20 different channels, including recently we just launched pets, and we have some of the greatest dog trainers in the world answering questions as well. So go check it out, anyquestion.com/Brett Hawke, or you can go to iOS or Android and look up Any Question there. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, and remember, success comes to those who endure just one moment longer. All right, today I am joined by one of the rare few who not only reached the top of the world as an athlete in his chosen sport of sprint swimming, but he also coached numerous athletes to do the same. A 5-time Olympian, twice as an athlete and 3 times as a coach. He was an Australian Olympian at the 2000 Sydney and the 2004 Athens Olympic Games. And before his Olympic career, he went to Auburn University to swim, and there he earned 17 All-American honours and was a 9-time NCAA individual champion, and he helped Auburn win 2 national team championships. After his Olympic athletic career, he returned to Auburn to become an assistant coach in 2006 and then became the head coach from 2009 to 2018. And during that time, Auburn won the NCAA National title in 2009, and he trained countless Auburn swimmers to the Olympics. He coached Brazilian swimmer César Cielo to the 50-meter freestyle gold medal at the Beijing Olympic Games in 2008. He was last on the show in episode 62, almost 2 years ago. A lot has changed since, and he now works as the head of expert acquisition at Any Question and has the world's #1 swimming podcast, Inside with Brett Hawke. And we've become good mates in the process. So I'm excited to discuss his various pivots and transitions throughout his career. But it's just such an honor and privilege to have him back on the show. So welcome, and thanks for joining me on the Greg Bennett Show, Brett Hawke. How are you, mate?
Good, mate. Thanks for having me. It's been 2 years. Wow.
Well, almost. I think we did it early, I think February or something, early 2021.
Yeah. Well, I'm doing something right if you have me back, so I appreciate it.
Well, a lot's changed, hasn't it? Like I think back, and I can't remember who it was on Instagram said, "Oh, Greg, you should get on Brett's show, and Brett, you should get on Greg's show," and we did. Yeah. And then, since then, I came to you, I think, just over a year ago now, and said, "Hey, we're building this platform called Any Question. We'd love to build out a swimming channel. Do you know anything about swimming?" And you took the reins.
Yeah, mate. Thank you for that. You really changed my life. And there's a few people in my life that I can say that about, and then you're definitely in that part of the story now. You're part of that picture. So like somebody that's really had a major influence on my life, I can now say that's Greg Bennett, and I thank you for that, because look, what you've done for me and the way that you have transformed my life, and what the door that you opened for me has been just remarkable. And I've learned so much in the past 12 months or so working for you, with you, and Ed Baker and the team at Any Question. I never imagined my life would go this way. And so it's funny when when your life takes a turn like that, you just kind of run with it. And I've got good people around me like yourself guiding me and being there with me, and we're trying to figure this out together. But mate, what a run. It's really exciting.
It really is, isn't it? And you talk about, the door analogy is perfect, because all I did was say there's a little crack in the door, and your personality, your passion and your drive just said, right, we're going to do this, let's do it. And both Ed and I were just blown away by the way you committed and said, this is what you want to do. We reached out and said, yeah, we need a bit of help. We'd love to build out the swimming channel. We got triathlon, we got cycling kind of going. And you came in, and this is the difference between people that you recognized an opportunity and you really went all in. And it seems to me when we, after reading out your intro there, you're quite good at doing that. You're quite good at going, there's a little opportunity. Yeah. I'm going to really push that door open and go all in. And that's when Ed and I were just so impressed with you that we were like, okay.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Like, look, I have been that. I have done that in my life, and I'm kind of proud of that. I think when I do listen to someone like you read a resume, I don't go back and look over my resume very often. But when someone like you reads something like that and reminds me of moments, I'm proud of myself that I have taken that approach in life where I've said like if something kind of tickles your feet or, gets the hair on the back of your neck kind of going, like you sense it, right? You have this sense in life, like this is just too good. And something like this doesn't come along very often. And when someone like Ed Baker and Greg Bennett team up together and they kind of offer you something to kind of consider, you think to yourself, well, I'd be an idiot if I didn't consider it. And then when you really look deeper and you say, well, Greg Bennett has been successful in every facet of his life. He's a world champion. And then Ed Baker has gone on to build multiple winning platforms. Well, I'd be an idiot if I didn't say, why wouldn't I jump at this offer? And if you look at it on the face of it, there wasn't much there to start with. It was just like, well, we've got an idea and we want your help with it. And so it's like, yeah, you have to take a leap of faith. But when you look at who's offering it to you, then it makes perfect sense to me,
Well, I want to go, a bit later in the show. I really want to dive into what your role is and what we're doing at Any Question is. But let's recap your journey to date, because, as I said in the intro, incredible what you did at Auburn University and all the NCAA titles. Then finally got to the Olympics, because I remember the last episode we chatted, 96 was the games that you really went for. And then I think you said you were working at Pizza Hut as a delivery driver or something, trying to make ends meet. And it was a fascinating episode. If people haven't heard that, just listen to the determination of somebody that says, this isn't would be a nice thing to have, it's a must-have, and you made it a must-have, and it's really an amazing journey. But give me the recap, of that period in your life. Yeah,
a couple of big moments, right? Like I was a 20-year-old young man who had been out of high school for a number of years, a struggling athlete, trying to make the 96 Olympic team, and it didn't happen. I missed it by 3/100ths of a second. And at that point, life smacks you in the face. And that's when my dad, I love my dad, and my dad's always been honest with me. My dad said, Brett, it's time to move on. It's time to go get a real job. Like you've done the swimming thing and it didn't work out. You wanted to go to the Olympics, and that was your dream. You're a 20-year-old man with no formal education, with no real experience. You're delivering pizzas. Like, you've got to get on with your life, buddy. And my dad was always that type of mentality, like, you got to work, to earn a living. And so I just said, I'm not ready. I just didn't feel right to be retired at 20 when I was just kind of coming into figuring out who I was and figuring out my body and just, I had a setback. Okay. But like, we all have setbacks. And it's like, so that was, for me, it was more of a defining moment of like, what am I going to do now? And that's when I decided to go to America. And it's that leap of faith of like, David Marsh comes into my life, and another man who opened a door for me, who's he was just inducted into the Swimming Hall of Fame as a coach last year. So one of the greatest coaches in history comes into my life, and I'd be stupid not to take an opportunity to go swim for him. So I went over to America, didn't really know anything about it, but again, had that attitude that you say I have, where it's like, if you're going to be in, you're going to be all in. So I didn't worry about what I was leaving behind. I didn't worry about whether I could eat Vegemite for breakfast in the morning. It was like, whatever America had to offer to me, I was going to embrace it wholeheartedly. And I did that, and I had a lot of success in college. And then I went back and made the Australian Olympic team in 2000 when I had more experience, when I was ready for it, for that moment, that occasion. I was able to cash in at that point in time because I had backed myself into gaining the experience that I needed. So that was really the turning point,
And then after that 2000 Olympic experience, was it okay? I mean, especially hometown Olympics, Sydney, it's all happening. And for people that don't understand, swimming in Australia, you're as big as our NFL players in the US, or the soccer players in Europe. Swimming in Australia, especially in that generation, there was a real, Ian Thorpe and Grant Hackett and Michael Klim and Madam Butterfly, Susie O'Neill. I mean, it was the peak of Australian swimming, and you were in that group of rock stars that performed. Was there any reason that you kept going to Athens? What was your thought then?
Yeah, again, I think I got a taste for it. I got a taste for that Olympic feeling, and I did go to the Olympics. I finished 13th in the 50 freestyle, made the semi-final, but again, it was like this feeling of disappointment. Even though I looked around, and I wasn't stupid. I wasn't Alexander Popov. I wasn't blessed with the greatest of genetics where I felt like I could take down any human on earth. Like, I wasn't that delusional, but at the same time, I was delusional enough to believe that I could compete with the best in the world. So I still had this burning desire to compete, and I wanted to race, and I love swimming. And like you said, swimming was such a big deal that why would you walk away from it if you had the chance to be in it? Like, why wouldn't you want to be teammates with Ian Thorpe and Grant Hackett, Susie O'Neill? I mean, these were the greatest people to learn from and travel with and be teammates with. So for me, it was like, no, I'm not walking away from this now. Now the attitude was, I'm going to dominate domestically in Australia. I'm going to be the number one sprinter in Australia, and no one's going to beat me. And that was kind of my mindset and my attitude. And that's what happened for 6 years. Like, I dominated Australian swimming in the sprint events. Now I'm talking about the 50 freestyle. If you put me up in a 2-lapper, people are going to stitch me up pretty good, But the 1-lapper was my event. I said no one's going to beat me in it, and no one did, And I traveled the world for 6 years with the best swim team in the world, with the greatest coaches, and I just learned so much. Like, I was like a sponge, sitting there watching right next to Ian Thorpe, preparing himself mentally and physically to go out and compete at the 2004 Olympics in what they regard as the greatest swim in history, the 200 freestyle. I was sitting right next to him, 10 minutes before that race. Like, that was kind of like I had the front seat to the best athletes in the world. And so, like, I was learning. And so as much as I was an athlete at that time, I was kind of pre-training myself to be a coach in the future, where I was taking it all in, and that was my training ground. So yeah, look, I swam for Australia for 6 years beyond 2000. I swam at every major international, never missed a team, and represented my country and loved it. And then got to the age of 31 and realized, look, I was traveling the world at that stage with a lot of young kids. They were just up and coming. 16-year-old girls were on the team, traveling the world with me. I was like, this isn't really fun anymore. So it wasn't a matter that I'd kind of hit a peak or I was injured or anything like that. It was more of like, all right, I've done it now. I've learned enough. I've enjoyed it. Now it's time to back out. Yeah,
there's something about when you tick all your boxes, and then the passion kind of goes, I've done it. Yeah, there's something there that you're like, I don't need to keep trying to do this. Like, that's my only thing I'm ever going to do. And to what you said, you instinctively knew that there's a coach in you. I mean, you left Athens, you made the final, you were 5th or 6th there in the final.
Yeah, I finished 6th in the final.
6th, and again, very, very close. Like we're talking so close in the 50
hundreds
meters.
of seconds to medal.
But then what was that next kind of door that came open for you then after Sydney Olympics and then moving back to Auburn University? How did that all work out?
I hadn't finished my degree, and I'm the type of guy that if there's something hanging over my head, I got to finish it. And my degree was hanging over my head because I'd left college early to come back to make the Olympic team. I knew I couldn't be living in America and make this Australian Olympic team in 2000. So I cut out early. I made that tough decision. It wasn't something that I was proud of at that point. And so David Marsh at that time was still the head coach at Auburn and offered me a chance to come back and finish my degree. And I got there, and the moment I touched down, he said, "Hey, we've got a problem. One of the assistant coaches has been diagnosed with cancer. I need some help for the summer. Can you help me for the summer? Just coach a group?" And I said, "I mean, sure, yeah, why not? Like, I'm just here. I'm studying a little bit, and I was like, yeah, I can do that." So I took a group, and I loved it from the get-go. I fell in love with coaching. It was never a dream of mine to be a coach, and he gave me a group of athletes to work with, and immediately I clicked with these kids, and we immediately started having success in my group. And I thought to myself, wow, this is the easiest job in the world. Like, what? I could do this, and little did I know down the road it would get much harder. But at that point in time, it was simple, and kids were swimming fast and they were happy. And he just offered me a full-time job after that as a coach. So what I ended up doing was going part-time to university, finishing my degree part-time, and at the same time being a full-time coach at the university. So
and then a couple of years later, how did the full-time head coach come about? I mean, you're assistant coach.
David Marsh left that year that I took the assistant job with him. He left the following year, and a new coach came in by the name of Richard Quick, who was an all-time legendary Stanford's women's swimming coach. He coached Janet Evans. He coached Jenny Thompson, Dara Torres. Like he was like a living legend. And he comes in and takes over the program at Auburn, and he keeps me on as the assistant sprint coach to coach the sprinters. And then 18 months later, he's diagnosed with a brain tumor and dies. And they say to me, well, we're going to bring in a new head coach. And I thought to myself, well, I know what it's like in America. If they bring in a new head coach, that coach has the ability to get rid of everybody. And I panicked at that stage. I kind of panicked, and I made a decision that I probably wasn't ready for, but I backed myself. I said, look, I want the head coaching job. I've only been in coaching 2 years, but I want the job. And they actually gave it to me. And not only did they give me the men's team, which I had exclusively been working with, but they also gave me the women's team, which I'd never worked with. And so that was, if I look back on anything as kind of a mistake, that was definitely a mistake at that point in time. I wasn't ready for it, you know what I mean? And I had to learn. The first 3 or 4 years were just learning on the job, like figuring it out.
But this is you, Brett. I mean, it's like this mentality, this hustle, this desire that I can do better, I can be better, and even if I'm not ready, I'll still jump in and see what I can do. And I think there's a lot of people that would be sort of going, yeah, there's no way I'd put my hand up for that because I'm not ready. And they're waiting for themselves to be perfect. And there's no such thing as perfect, and there's no such thing as being completely ready. And I love the fact that you own it. You say, look, I wasn't ready. But I also just love the fact that you're like, well, if I don't do this, I could get fired. So it's either dive in or not. I think that's a really cool story. And about, look, there's an opportunity, put your hand up, and do the best you can, right? Yeah.
Well, I love my team. It was my team. I'd swum there. I'd coached there. I'd had success. By that stage, I had coached an Olympic champion in the 50 freestyle, and in César Cielo. He broke the world record that year as well. So it was like, things were clicking, and I at the time, probably my ego told me I could handle it, and I learned pretty quickly that there was a lot more to coaching. It was a lot more to the management of the team than anything, right? Like I became a manager, and instead of, I thought it was a head coaching position. It's not a coaching position; it's a management position. And I just hadn't done the management training. I hadn't learned how to manage, a team of 70 people at that stage and be the leader of that team. And so when you walk in every day, everybody looks at you for the answers. And I just didn't have it at that point enough. And now, I held the job for 10 years. So like I did a good job, but I didn't do it to the standard that I wanted to do it, where I wanted to be winning national championships year after year. And we didn't get to that point year after year where we were doing that. And that was disappointing. So at the end of 10 years, I said, you know what? I've done it. I'm going to hand it off to someone else and give them a chance. And so I decided to kind of divert careers and go back into I went into a job where we were running swim clinics all around the country. So we were running about 250 swim clinics. It was a business called Fitter and Faster, where we would go in and take kind of 9-year-olds to 18-year-olds. We would teach them, the basics of swimming. So I did that for a couple of years.
I want to go back just a little bit. You breezed over, César Cielo and what was it like, comparing your own sort of drive and determination as an athlete when you're going and it's all about you. But then the next Olympics, you went to 2000, you went 2004, and the very next Olympics, you're coaching the world's greatest ever 50-meter freestyler, 100. And what was that experience like when you compare coaching the gold medalist to your own experience? Was it more nerve-wracking? Was it more heightened arousal levels? What was it like?
I think you have a sense of responsibility, but you also do your best, where you say, look, I'm going to give you the tools. It's like you're a tradesman, right? And you go in and say, here's the tools, and I'm going to teach you how to use these tools, and then ultimately I'm going to hand them to you, and you got to finish the job, and so that's what it was. It was basically me teaching him everything I could possibly teach him. Now, in my experiences at the past 2 Olympics, I think it helped me to kind of connect with him on a level unlike any other coach at the time, because I just stepped off the pool deck. I was still regarded as one of the fastest swimmers in the world, and here I am now taking over his program and connecting with him and saying, well, here's everything I know. Here's how to apply it. Here's all the current information. Here's the things that I learned from being around the greatest athletes that maybe other people don't know. So maybe we've got a leg up here. We know something that other people don't know. So you've got the talent. I've got the information. Why don't we put the two together and we'll work our asses off in the next couple of years to be the best in the world? And that's what we did. And it just clicked. When it clicks with somebody, when they come in and say, I'm gonna do everything you tell me to do, and then at the same time I've got the talent to do it, you can make magic happen in that sense. Look, this kid was a freak talent. Don't get me wrong. He could do things in training that no one else could do. He didn't do them all the time. It wasn't like he was on every repeat. But if he wanted to embarrass somebody in practice and say, okay, I got another level I can go to, he would get to that level and just kind of put people in their place. And you'd think he'd maxed out on something, and then all of a sudden he goes to this next gear and you're like, oh, wow, okay. Yeah. That's special, and you've seen guys like that in athletics. You've seen triathletes like that where all of a sudden they click this next gear and you're like, no one else has that gear. And so he kind of had that in sprinting. And when he tapped into it, it was like, oh man, the stars aligned. It was just gorgeous. It was beautiful. And everybody could see it on the pool deck at the time. So yeah, he took my knowledge and we ended up breaking world records. And it was just one of those real great partnerships, that didn't last forever, but it lasted long enough to create magic,
Yeah, I love that. I love the fact that you've been around the swimming community now, for 30 years plus, and now you've gone and, in a sense, you're giving back to the community with your podcast, where you're interviewing the world's greatest swimmers, swim coaches, anything to do with the sport. And, I think you've even had some strength trainers on there and all sorts of people. How is that transition going from, being an athlete, world-renowned coach, to now hosting this world-renowned podcast in the swimming world? Swimming's in your blood, isn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately it is, and that's like, again, I never planned it this way. I never said that I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this. The only thing I really wanted to do that burned a hole in me is I wanted to be an Olympic athlete. And I didn't know whether I could get there at some point. Many times throughout that process over those 4 or 5 years, I'm like, I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't know if I'm good enough. You got to be a pretty special athlete in Australia to be called an Olympian. And I just didn't know whether I had that type of talent. And so I just worked so hard and I focused in and I got to a point where I just stopped making excuses, Greg. I was like, look, there's a million reasons why this maybe shouldn't happen, but I'm not going to accept any of those. Like, I'm going to make it happen. And what I told my athletes, this is a great thing that I want everybody to understand. They're not going to stop the Olympic race on race day. If the Olympic triathlon goes off on August 25th, 2024 in Paris, if that's the date, they're not changing it because Greg Bennett wakes up with a headache. They're not changing it if Greg Bennett wakes up with a flat tire. The Olympic race is going to go off August 15th, whether you're there or not. Mm-hmm. And this is what I tell my athletes: stop making excuses, because do you want to compete for a medal? If you do, then under any circumstances, you're going to be on that line on race day, under any circumstances. And there's no excuses. And so you've just got to eliminate all excuses in your life to get things done. And I think you can apply that to all aspects of your life generally. Like, I think too often we look for the excuses, the ways out, the reasons why it shouldn't happen. And I look for reasons why it will happen. That's what I do in my life.
So you've had to, I think the last episode we were on, we both talked about, self-doubt and insecurities and how they were in us both. And over time, we got better and better at sort of managing that skill set to change that mindset. You're somebody that's now on the other side of it, where you can help others with that kind of mindset change. Is that a part of the podcast, is sharing stories with other guests and figuring out how they do it?
Oh, yeah. Look, I don't get into what's your favorite workout, what heart rate did you hold, and, what time interval. I don't care. Like that to me is like insignificant stuff. Like to me, it's more about what you're talking about here in terms of sharing the experience, understanding how to get through things, overcome things, be successful. Like, I often talk to my athletes like, what were you feeling in the marshalling area? What were you feeling, 2 minutes before the race? What were you doing? What kind of actions were you taking? How were you responding? Because ultimately 10 minutes later you go out and you produce either the best performance of your life, something that you've never done before, or you fall short, And so, like, I try and analyze the whys of that moment in time and what led up to that, and what were you thinking, and how did you react to certain things? So, like, that's what I'm into more so than, look, I think ultimately what I tell my athletes as well is, like, look, your brain tells your legs what to do. It's not your legs telling your brain what to do. You can't say to me, like, a lot of the times an athlete will say, oh, my legs hurt. Your legs hurt because your legs are telling your brain that they hurt. Why doesn't your brain tell your legs that they don't hurt? Right? and you flip it on your legs. Yeah. And you tell your legs something else. Instead of your legs controlling your brain and the sensors in your legs and the feelings, like, feelings are controllable, right? And that's the way I've always put it, is like, you can control your feelings. So for me, the analysis of that and the understanding of that is so much more powerful than any kind of workout that we could, talk about on a daily basis,
Oh, you and I, mate, I totally think the same thing. And for a lot of listeners, they would have heard me sort of refer to this quote, which was from Dr. Tommy Wood, who is on the Any Question platform. And, he's like, what you think has a direct impact on your physiology. And when you truly start believing that, positive or negative thought has a positive or negative effect on your physiology. 100%. And you start owning that, and it's trainable. It's a skill set. That's what's cool about it. It's like, it's not like, oh, Brett Hawke, he was born this way and so he gets it. It's one of the cool skills that we all get to develop and get better at, is going, I have the full ability to control my brain and my thoughts, which then affect my physiology in every single way. And that's where it's like one of my favorite things about what we're doing at Any Question is that you and I are on the team, And we both come with this kind of mindset of whether it's being past athletes and we've just understood the power of the mind. And, we're now, 15 employees full-time and plus, a cast of thousands of contractors and part-timers. But it's fun to have meetings where, you and I kind of discuss mindset and to see the rest of the team kind of engage in the storytelling process. It's one of my favorite things. It really is, where the two, you come one day and you'll be talking about, goal setting and looking from the final destination on top of the staircase back or whatever it is. I've always loved that we bring that Olympic athlete mentality, and I kind of want to bring even more of that into the company as we grow.
Yeah, no, I do too. And, a lot of what you learn over time is relatable, and that's where you can kind of pivot and move into any direction in life and be successful by the things that you've learned over time,
Yeah. Now, before we dive into a little bit more about any question, I got to ask you, on your podcast, you've got a couple of 100 episodes now. It's crushing it out there. Are there any episodes that stand out to you that have been all-time favorites?
It's always, for me, what have you done lately? It's always the last podcast I did is the best one, So like, I literally did a podcast with Cody Simpson, a live show last night where him and I just really talked. Like he was very open and honest. And if you don't know Cody Simpson's story, he went from a musician to now he's an Australian representative, Australian swimmer, and he's got an incredible story. And I was kind of part of the initial comeback for him, where I got him back into really good shape and swimming again, and him and I have a great relationship. But I had this great conversation with him last night. So if you want to learn anything about success and how to be successful in life, like listen to that 30-minute podcast I did with Cody last night. It's a fantastic podcast. I love it. But like, look, I've also talked to Dean Boxall. Dean Boxall is one that just jumps out in my mind. Dean Boxall coached Ariarne Titmus. Ariarne Titmus was the person, the female that took down Katie Ledecky at the Olympics last year. Now, Katie Ledecky's unbeatable, right? And so Dean knew this, and so Dean spends a couple of years analysing Katie and following her and studying her and figuring out how to beat her, and puts it into practice, goes to the Olympics, takes this young girl and beats Katie Ledecky. And so he comes on and shares this story, and we have this incredible conversation for about 3 hours, and he goes in depth about all of this, and he's very open and honest and raw as well. And it's just one of the greatest conversations I've ever had, and we recorded it, so it's like history, So I often tell people, go back and listen to the Dean Boxall podcast. Just brilliant. But yeah, look, everybody's got their own story to share, and I think that's what I love about it. Everybody's got some little nugget that they can give to somebody, and you can learn something every time you have a conversation. And I've always been open to that. I've always been open to having conversations with people and learning from them, and that's where I think I've helped accelerate my own successes, is because I've learned from other people,
Yeah. It's such a privilege, isn't it? These conversations we get to have, but it's not just world-class people. A bit to what you're saying, I feel like the more time I've spent being a podcast host, probably the better I've become at understanding that everybody out there has knowledge worth sharing. That, there's been times where I'm pushing my little ones on the swing and the guy next to me is pushing his little one on the swing, and I just start prying and having a conversation with him, and I leave going, everybody has a journey. Everybody has a story worth telling. Some people tell it better, and some people have got an even more impressive story, but it's amazing the privilege that we have given ourselves to some degree by starting our own podcast, that we get to just have these amazing conversations with people. And, someone like touching on Cody Simpson, the guy, he's got like 5 million followers on Instagram. He's would you call him a teen idol? What do they say these days with somebody who's like on the music?
Well, I think at the time he was, he was a teen idol, but he's a 25-year-old man now. He's gone on to be so successful later in life, and I think that's kind of rare for someone like that too. He's keeping on, and he's just doing so many remarkable things, and now he's part of the Australian swim team, and it's just like, wow, like what a story to share.
That's cool. I love that you were a part of that at the start. But mate, let's talk about any question. Tell me about what you're doing, and what is any question. Tell me about your role and some of your recent onboards and some of your favorite sort of people that you've brought onto the platform.
Well, I guess initially, you and Greg asked me, Ed, asked me to, help build out the swimming side of the platform. And I said, okay, great. And, you took me under your wing and showed me, what you were building and why you were building it and why it was important and then how it could relate to anybody, right? And I just, I loved it. I loved the concept. I thought it was fantastic. And the idea behind it is that, you can come on. It's a place where you can share your knowledge and experience. And ultimately, that's what you and I were doing in kind of podcast form. But here it's like, you open the app up, there's questions waiting for you. And you can just select a question that you want to answer. And then you come in and you can just share. And I think everybody, you see it now in social media, like everybody wants a voice. Everybody wants to be heard. And not everybody has the same level of expertise, by the way. But I think what we've decided to build is people that do have that expertise, that knowledge, and that history of success, and that understanding of a particular craft. And we call it expertise, right? So, like, that's what I had in swimming through my years of study. And I felt like I had separated myself, and I knew people like me. So I just brought in like-minded people. I brought in Bob Bowman, who's Michael Phelps's coach, who, obviously one of the greatest in history. I brought in my mentor, David Marsh. And then I started bringing in Olympic athletes, all types of different Olympic athletes. And, my first one was Bruno Fratis. Bruno was a bronze medalist at the Tokyo Olympics for me, so like I brought people in that I knew who had expertise. Ryan Murphy was another guy, like an Olympic champion, who
greatest backstroker in the world, right? I mean,
greatest backstroker in the world. Actually, he's at the World Championships right now in Australia, and I think he's going to win that tonight in the 100 backstroke again. He'll win another world title. So, like, my first phone calls were to these people that I greatly respect, who have these expertise and knowledge, and I said, come on this platform and share it with me. And they did that. And it's Sergio Lopez, another one of the greatest coaches, and, is from Spain and just has his own way of answering questions and sharing his knowledge. And everybody's got their own unique style. But that's what any question is to me. It's like, look, anybody who has real, true expertise can come in and share that with everybody else. And we can learn. Like, you and I just and Ed and the team just opened up this pets channel where, we have these pet trainers, the dog trainers coming. I have a dog and I've got all these questions about my dog, and now I've got these pet experts, these dog trainers in the app, and I'm in the app like any other user learning from these pet trainers, like these dog trainers, and I'm learning so much. And at the same time, I'm onboarding them, bringing them onto the app, so my job is to find them and bring them in. And that's so exciting. So I'm talking to them about the app, and then I go in and I'm a user. Like, I'll ask them questions and I'll listen to their answers, and then I'll apply it to my life. So I'm making my life better by learning from people, and I'm not having to now. Like, I'm just taking in so much information and learning so quickly that I feel like I'm just a better human. I'm improving my life. My life around me is getting better because I'm learning so much from this platform. And I think that's what any question is. There's so much noise and fakeness. You get a real person at the other end of the answer on the question that you're asking, a real person who genuinely responds authentically. I like that about the platform too. So, and we've opened it up to everybody and everything, in the sense that we want to find expertise everywhere and share it with everybody. So we're starting all these new channels, which is exciting. And any question right now is whatever we want to make it. That's the other beautiful thing about this thing, is like, what do we want to make it? Because it's not defined 3 years from now. Like, we still are creating our own roadmap of what we want to be. And that really, really excites me. You know?
It's exciting, isn't it? I mean, we're 1 year in. It was heavily focused on endurance sports for the first sort of 6 months, swimming, triathlon, cycling, running. And then we moved sort of into strength and nutrition and musculoskeletal and then, healthcare came on board and other sports, adaptive sports and hockey have all sort of come on. And cross-country skiing recently has been a big one, but it's been also fun just to see, like you said, a channel like Pets coming on, and we've got so many new areas that we're reaching out to find people with the ultimate amount of experience and expertise. And so tell me about who have you been onboarding recently? Because I know you've got some, I'm always envious of you being the head of expert acquisition and you have your team of people that onboard every single one of our curated experts that we have coming on. Who have you been bringing on recently?
Well, I'll give you a day in the life of Brett Hawke right now. I had this day the other day, it's just memorable, where it was just an eclectic mix of people that, I set up these Zoom calls with experts in different fields, everybody on our app, and they get to choose when they set up a time for me. So I had this one day where it was just a random mix of people that had set up these onboarding calls with me. And so my first call was a NASA photographer, right? This guy takes photos for NASA. That's his job. He takes photos of rockets. And I'm sitting there talking to this guy about his job, and he's telling me all about it. And I'm like, wow, that's incredible. The next call I go into 30 minutes later is a big wave surfer, one of the greatest big wave surfers in the world. He rides 60-foot monsters, and that's his job, to travel the world. He sits on an app and tells it, where's the surf? Where's it happening in the world? And he'll get on a plane and fly to the surf. He'll take a camera crew with him. They'll film it. And that's his job. He rides the biggest monsters in the world on a surfboard. Then 30 minutes later, I have a dog specialist who's one of the world's leading dog trainers. And I'm here, I've got a Spanish water dog. And I'm asking them questions as I'm going through the onboarding process. 30 minutes later, I'm having a conversation with the head of genetics at Harvard University. This guy, they call him the father of genetics. He's so intelligent. He's kind of on the Einstein level. And here I am having a one-on-one conversation with this man. I'm thinking to myself, I wish there were some flies on the wall right now. I wish Greg and I wish Ed and all the team could see me. I'm talking to this genetics expert. I know nothing about genetics other than the fact that, it's nice to know that you've got smart people out there looking after you. So, this guy was incredible. I couldn't even describe it. And he was just as intrigued with me, being a 5-time Olympian, as I was with him. And that's the beauty of the conversation. It's not one way. They're just as excited to talk to, an Olympian as I am to talk to, a Harvard professor. And then, and then a couple of, an hour later after I have a break, I've got an Olympic champion swim coach come in. And then I bring in one of my friends who worked for us at Auburn. He was the head nutritionist for us. He went on to become the head of Dallas Cowboys nutrition. So he's getting the Dallas Cowboys fed to have these performances, and that's what he does now. That's his full-time job. So I brought him onto the app. And then I finished off with a national pickleball champion. So I'm we're just all over the place. In there I had another guy he's a marathon runner. Here's an incredible story, right? He comes from somewhere in Africa, and he gets a scholarship to Alaska, a university in Alaska. So he comes from Africa. He's a runner. He gets a scholarship to run in Alaska. He goes out one night for a run, and something happens. Anyway, they find him 36 hours later. He's on the side of the road, and he's got frostbite. Long story short, they have to go in. They have to take his feet off. This guy's a marathon runner, and they have to take his feet, both feet. And what does he do when he wakes up? The first thing he says is, "Thank God I'm alive." It breaks me up now, thinking about it. The first thing he says is, thank God I'm alive. He doesn't complain that he doesn't have feet. This man's a runner, and they take his feet. He doesn't complain about that. He says, thank you that I'm alive. And he says, can I still run? And they say, yeah, with prosthetics. He says, great, I'll run with prosthetics. Now he's a world record holder for adaptive athletes he runs with no feet. He runs with prosthetics, these things that he puts on his feet to run these marathons, and now he's a world record holder. It's just incredible people, mate. Incredible.
A day in the life of Brett Hawke. You've heard me say it to the team several times. I think you've got the best job in the world where, don't get me wrong, you are talking a lot and it can be tiring, but just these people that are coming onto the platform, I think we're up to 650, 700 world-renowned sort of people with expertise and across, I don't know, 20 plus channels now, and it's growing rapidly. And I just, a lot of that is due to you and who you brought on originally. We have in the swimming channel people like Caleb Dressel and some of the biggest names that you can imagine in the swimming world. And then obviously with your background, like you said, being a 5-time Olympian, being able to speak to, a NASA photographer or a geneticist or whatever it is, it's really extraordinary. How is being an athlete, being a world-renowned coach, how has that kind of helped in the way you're working now in the corporate space?
I think back to the time where I sat down with yourself and Ed, and you kind of offered me the job, and you said, you're doing a great job in swimming, but could you do this in other facets of life? Could you onboard other people, other experts? And, you want to respond straight away, like, oh, of course I can. But I sat there for a second. I had real doubt. I was like, I don't know if I could do this in other areas. And what I found is that if you have a set of core principles that you've learned through athletics, those then translate into any type of success that you want to have. And so, like, yes, you're going to have your doubt, you're going to have your fear, you're going to have anxiety, and those sorts of things are always going to be part of the deal, right? But what you learn to do as an athlete is manage those. And you go back to your core principles. So my core principles are these, Greg. So first of all, show up on time. To me, on time is 5 minutes early. Like that's on time. I'm always 5 minutes.
You and I are always the first to the Zoom calls. Have you noticed?
To me, it's just, 5 minutes early is on time. And so that's a core principle. And then people respect you for that, right? Like if you turn up to a Zoom call and you're sitting there waiting for someone, they respect, oh, wow, he's on time. So that's there. And then it's be prepared, right? Like you got to be prepared for anything, and you've got to be able to adapt, and you got to be able to connect with people. So you got to be prepared. Do a little bit of homework on them. Yeah. I'm sure they're doing a little bit of homework on you, so you better know who you're talking to. So I do that. And then the next thing is you work until the job gets done. Like you don't stop, you get the job done. And so I work on a 24-hour period, what can I do today to be the best I can today, to get the job done today? Like I understand what I've got to do on Thursday and Friday. That's in my calendar, but I can't worry about that now. If I worry about Thursday today, then I'm not focused on today. So I always focus on what I can do today and be the most successful I can be today. One of the things Ed told me is, Brett, it's a marathon, not a sprint. I'm not good at that because I'm a sprinter, right? And you told me that, I'm like, Greg, I can't do the stuff you do. But, you always tell me, Brett, slow down. It's not a sprint. And so like I've tried to take that on board of like, look, you're not going to get it all done, in 2 months. Take your time with it. But if you focus on the daily, you can be successful. And then you obviously learn from mistakes. You're going to make mistakes, but you got to learn from them. You can't make the same mistakes over and over again and expect to be successful. It's okay to make mistakes, but learn from them. And then, you surround yourself with smarter people. I've done that with you and Ed for sure, right? So, like, that's an easy one for me. I was like, okay, well, these guys are smarter than me. So surround yourself with smart people. And then I think another core principle for me is, you got to be able to work within a team for sure. Like, teamwork is important. Here's a big one for me, though, that I think, celebrate successes along the way. Like, I'm pretty good at that. Like, I think, look, every person that comes onto the app is a new person for us, and I celebrate that. I love it. I love that we're bringing new people on every day, and that could be an expert or a user. Every time a user comes on to use our platform, I like to celebrate that stuff. So everybody counts for me. So I like to celebrate the successes. And then the last thing, I guess, there's a core principle is, don't ever let a loss crush you, completely. You're going to take losses, but you don't let them crush you. You help you use them to elevate you. And I think, look, those are the things you learn in athletics, Greg, and those apply to anything, right? If you stick to those core principles and you do them well, I guarantee you'll be successful in anything that you attempt, right? And you learn that through athletics.
You and me both are surrounded by very smart people in this company. And I think that's, when you see people, our now head of operations, Ryan Durkin, or head of product, Joshua Friedman, or Lang Ching, who, head of analytics. These are brilliant people.
Yeah.
I sit back sometimes going, almost watching like it's watching a sporting event. You're watching great minds work at such a rapid rate that you sit back in awe and go, oh yeah, I'm meant to be contributing as well. Oops. Because I just love watching these people work.
One of the ways that I picked the team that I wanted to go to in America is I picked a team that was full of people that were better than me, right? So that when I went to practice, I got beat up every day and they made me better. So I was like number 6 or 7 on the depth chart. I didn't pick a team where I walked in, I was the top dog.
No.
I walked in and I had to earn my spot. And I think that's what I talk about. Surround yourself with smarter, people that are smarter than you. We have that on our team. And those people make me better, so I'm not as intelligent as them, but they're improving my intelligence by being around them, and I'm getting smarter. So, if I was to then go into another room with different people, I might be the smartest man in the room now because I've been surrounded by Ed Baker and, other people. So there's that. I want to say one other example here. I learned this from Grant Hackett. Grant Hackett's one of the greatest athletes in Australian swimming history. Multiple. He hadn't been beaten in a 1500 swimming event in the pool for 7 years. He had a 7-year streak where he was unbeaten, and he answered this question for me: do athletes make good employees? And I think you've asked me this in the past: do athletes make good employees? And this is what he said, and I think it relates really well. He said, "Look, when I became Olympic champion, I look back and it took me 10 years of work to get to that point, right? So when I go into a new venture, when I go into a business, I'm not going in as Grant Hackett, the Olympic champion. I'm going in as Grant Hackett, the man who started 10 years previously, who had to start from the bottom again." So this is what I learned from Grant Hackett. It was so beautiful. He said, Brett, a lot of athletes go in thinking that they should be treated the way that they were by what they earned athletically, right? So, yes, I'm Olympic champion, so I'm going to go into this business and everybody's going to treat me like the Olympic champion. He went in with the mindset of, you're going to be Grant Hackett, the 15-year-old who's earning his way to be Olympic champion. And so everything that I learned along the way, I had to then reapply to business. Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to do here in business is, yes, I'm smart and I'm experienced and I'm good at something else, but that's not going to make me the best businessman. It's not going to make me the best tech person, right? So I have to go in with the mentality of I'm starting from the bottom again. And when you have that mentality, when you have that athlete's mentality where you start from the bottom again, then you can be successful. Then you'd make a great employee. You're not going to make a great employee by walking in and saying, everybody bow down to me because I'm Grant Hackett. You know what I mean?
No, I agree with that. And I think having any kind of career before you go and pivot and go a new direction, it's a nice to have, and you've got all your learnings, like you said. But I think one of the things of being an athlete is it's a real patience game. It's like Grant said, it's 10 years. And I've said this to Ed several times is, look, I don't want the journey to be as long as my athletic career. And what I mean by that is, I found the sport when I was 15. By 25, I won my first sort of World Series race. By 30, I was world number 1. And by 35, I finally became sort of like the biggest prize money earner. Like those little steps that's, we're talking 10, 15, 20, 25 years of consistent work. Now, don't get me wrong. I want any question to explode and be a lot faster than that. But I also come from a mindset of, like you mentioned earlier, that this is an Ironman triathlon. It's a marathon. We're getting going here. We're building our team. We're establishing where our weaknesses are and mitigating those. We're identifying our strengths and we're playing to those the best we can. We're understanding the marketplace, which is your competitors and, how you're going to beat them in the game. And all of that matters. And you've got to just sort of work at that over time. Now, the difference is, and a bit like being an athlete, the money can run out, all sorts of things can happen. So there's still this kind of sense of urgency, but then step back and be patient. Be urgent, step back. And I think athletes have that kind of ability to do push phases, know when they got to push hard, know when they got to sit back. But mate, you've been a pearl of wisdom in this episode, and I haven't finished up because I have a couple of other questions for you. And you've kind of touched on a few of these already, so it might be too difficult for you. But first question I have, what would you tell your 18-year-old self?
What would I tell my 18-year-old self? If I go back to when I was 18, what jumps out at me is I had ambition and I had dreams and I had a vision for myself at 18 that probably nobody else had. At that point in time, I was I wouldn't say delusional, but I had greater expectations for myself than probably the people around me. Right, like I saw where I wanted to go, and that probably wasn't on everybody else's roadmap, but it was on my roadmap. So what I'd say to my 18-year-old self is, you were right. You were right. Like
I love it.
You were right to dream big. You were right to hold yourself accountable. You were right to back yourself. You were right to be uncomfortable at that point in time. Like everybody runs from being uncomfortable. I was embracing the uncomfortableness, right? Like I was really embracing it. Like, this is going to make you better, Brett, and stick to your guns. Like, it's okay to be uncomfortable right now. Don't run from that. And so I tell my 18-year-old self, you were right, and I think too often we want to go back and say, oh, you were wrong. You regret this, you regret that. No, I don't. Like, I don't have any regrets. In the sense of where I was at 18, I was dreaming very, very big, and it wasn't the dreams of the people around me, right? And so, and the other thing I'd say probably to my 18-year-old self is, like, I dreamed of what the world was at that point in time because I hadn't explored the world. I'd never been outside of Australia really at 18, and I imagined the world was beautiful. And I'll tell you this, I'll go back and tell my 18-year-old self, you were right about that too. The world is beautiful. There's a lot of beautiful people in it. There's a lot of beautiful places. I've been all over the globe, Greg, just like you. I've been around the world 6 times. I've seen everything there is to see. I've eaten every food there is to eat now. And at 18, all I had was dreams about that. And again, I was right on that. So, like, the world is a beautiful place, and I'd tell myself to do exactly what I had.
That's awesome. I love that. You were right to dream big. Yeah. You were right to not doubt yourself. And just go for it. I think that's phenomenal. All right, next one. Who would you want to have dinner with? Non-family. They can be living or dead. 3 people. Non-family. Who would I want to have dinner with? I hope it's okay if I break this rule, because my grandfather died when I was 21, and my grandfather was an alcoholic, right? I'm a pretty severe alcoholic. Like, he would get drunk every day, and he would lose his temper. He was a violent alcoholic. And I grew up with this man, and when he wasn't drunk, he was the most beautiful human on earth. And he believed in me. He wanted me to be great, right? And I guess that's where my dreams came from, was from him, And he died when I was 21, and what he wanted from me was everything that he wanted from himself that he couldn't do, right? Like, he was an alcoholic, and it consumed him, and at that point, he had no control over it, right? And but what he told me is, like, don't be me, don't follow me, be the best person you can be, and follow your dreams, So I think I'd want to go back and definitely show him what I've done over the past 20 or so years, so that would be cool. And I guess another person that I've always idolized is Elvis. I love Elvis for some reason. How about that recent movie?
The recent movie was amazing. I thought that guy who played Elvis was phenomenal.
I wasn't into Elvis as much as you were, but after that movie, I was like, whoa, I get it. Yeah. I get it.
I love Elvis. I was fascinated with Elvis. Again, I think someone who just maximized their talent. I loved his music. I loved everything about him. And I think another person I really want to meet who's been an inspiration to me is Joe Rogan. I think Joe, I listened to his podcast, and I think I took a lot of the way he did his podcasting and I put that into mine, and it's applied really well. And I would just like to thank him. I think he does a phenomenal job, and I think he's a fascinating guy, and I've got a lot of the same interests as him with MMA and things like that. So I think I'd love to have dinner with Joe Rogan.
What a great 3. And I think I'm the same kind of feeling with Joe Rogan. It was like listening to his and watching what he did that really inspired me as well on my show. So it's you and I are both big fans of the way he's conducted himself in that show for so many years. Yeah. He's phenomenal. What a great dinner, mate. And just touching on your grandfather, it's like there's just so much wisdom with the older generation that I think in the West we're not tapping into. It's one of the areas I'm really excited about, with any question is building out something where we can really have a legacy platform where we can really get that wisdom.
Yeah, you take a 90-year-old man, look at the life that man has lived.
We always think we're doing, the world is giving us something new, and it's like, no, these people have seen it all before. And I'm fortunate to surround myself with many people that have far more experience than I do. They're older, they've been through it all, whether that's my mom or some of my finance mentors or whoever it is. And they're the best people to learn from, truly.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
All right, next question. A big one. Where do you see yourself in 3 years?
In 3 years, I see myself in Boston because I just moved here and I'm happy. I'm happy to be in a new city. I'm happy to be working for the company. But look, I think ultimately what we've done over the past, 6 to 12 months, we've made promises to people that like we're going to do something with this company, and I'm determined to do that. I know Ed's determined, you're determined, and for 3 years I see myself in exactly the same position, but I see myself fulfilling some of those promises, right? Like I think a lot of people have backed us, a lot of people have trusted us, and I take that with a huge responsibility of like, look, if somebody's going to put a lot of trust and faith in me, I better put some action behind this. So 3 years from now, everything that we've been telling people that we will be and we want to be, then that's what we're going to be. And that's what I'm going to fulfill that promise for, and that's where I'll be in 3 years from now.
Love it, buddy. Yeah, and I agree with you. I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Let's finish. You're a rapid-fire athlete. You're fast twitch. You're all the power in the world. I'm going to finish with some rapid-fire questions at you. You ready?
All right, let's give it a go.
Okay, one book you'd recommend.
Oh, one book I'd recommend is Like, Comment, Subscribe. That is the one about YouTube. That's a great book. Like, comment, subscribe.
Yeah.
Mark Bergen, I think it is. Great book.
Yeah, I did that one on Audible a while. It's a big book, but it's a lot of it gives you an understanding of how sort of YouTube, they've had to do a lot in terms of figuring things out. We think, they're just awesome. It's like, they've had to go through a hell of a lot to make it happen.
Yeah.
All right, 2 most used apps on your phone.
Oh, 2 most used. I mean, Instagram, unfortunately, I'm definitely, I built a platform on Instagram, and I think the other one is YouTube. Like I have a YouTube channel. So like YouTube and Instagram are probably the 2 big ones for me. Yeah.
What time of day are you most productive?
I would say later in the afternoon when people are kind of going to sleep. I have this kick. You know this. You go to bed early, and I'm up there doing stuff. So I have this kick from like 7 to 10. I think the 7 to 10 range for me is a pretty productive range.
First job.
I picked up golf balls, or not even picked up golf balls. So what people? This is how I learned to swim too, I would say. So I would sit in a lake. My house was surrounded by 3 golf range, golf club. And we would go down to the lakes and we would sit in the lake, and the golfers would hit their ball into the lake. I would dive down, grab their ball, wash it off for them, and I would sell it back to them for $5. I mean, that's a job, right? That's my first job right there, selling golf balls to people that would smack them into the lake.
Nice hustle. Mm-hmm. All right. Out of 10, how cool are you?
I mean, I have my moments where I'm probably a 5 on some days and I'm probably a 9.5 on others. I'm a Gemini, I got 2 sides. So
I love it. I'll give you the 9.5. I'll give you the 9.5. I don't think you're quite a 10 yet. You're 9.5, but you're a very suave man.
Yeah.
All right. Who would you want to play a movie of your life?
If he could swim, probably Brad Pitt. Yeah, I'm a Brad Pitt fan, or Johnny Depp or Brad Pitt. Those 2
Chris
guys.
Hemsworth might fit you and your personality more.
Yeah, good dude. I'd like to meet him. Yeah, Aussie guy.
Yeah, there we go. All right, here we go. Which decade of music is best?
Oh, 90s, easy. 90s, yeah. I'm a 90s guy. Guns N' Roses, Nirvana, I'm a grunge rock type guy for sure, I think. And then hip hop, like Tupac, Biggie Smalls, I kind of go both ways there. So yeah, I'm definitely 90s for sure.
All right, if you could be transformed into any one animal, which animal would you choose?
I've always been fascinated with the tiger. I like tigers.
Well, that's your university, wasn't it? Auburn Tigers?
Yeah, Auburn Tigers. Yeah, Tigers. But, I had tell this story, and again, I go back to this 2004 where I'm sitting next to Ian Thorpe, where he gets us in a group and he says, he's trying to conjure up images, and he goes around the group and he says, what's an animal that invokes a sense of strength in you? And so we all go around. This is like 10 minutes before he goes out to race. And so we go around the group and everybody gives an animal. And I did say a hawk because Hawke's my last name. And he said, why do you say hawk? And I said, well, what the hawk does is it goes up into the air and it circles and it swoops down on its prey and it grabs its prey, after it circles its prey for a while. And he's like, I like that. And so then, 10 minutes later, he goes out in the Olympic final and he kind of did that hawk move where he swooped, and then last minute he came in and
came in over the top. I love that. That's a great story.
Yeah.
All right, two more. Where is somewhere you haven't been you'd like to go?
Oh, easy. I haven't been to Africa. I was telling someone this the other day. I can't believe I haven't been to Africa.
Yeah.
I mean, all the way through, South Africa, all the way up to the top.
Next offsite, mate. Our next retreat offsite for any question.
Yeah,
we'll put it on the books.
I'd love to go to Africa, and then the other one is the Middle East. Like I haven't been in the Middle East. So I'd like to go to any one of those countries in the Middle East that is safe enough to go to. Yeah,
it's almost the more you travel, the more you realize you haven't gone anywhere. Like, to your point earlier, you've been around the world 6, times. And
I've been everywhere except those two places.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? All right, last one, big one, greatest movie of all time.
Oh, that's easier. For me, it's Godfather Part 2. I love The Godfather Part 2. I think that's just an epic classic, when they go De Niro and Pacino. De Niro and Pacino, they go back and forward between the young Godfather and the up and coming. Man, Godfather Part 2 is just an epic movie. Yeah, I could do that all day, every day.
Well, mate, this has been a real treat. It's been so great just to chat with you for an hour. I know you got to get back to work. We're recording on a Tuesday. And you've got more people to onboard and things to get involved in. And firstly, I just want to say, it's been just a real privilege to work with you this past year, to have you come on, and your enthusiasm for what we're doing has just been absolutely incredible. And secondly, just to have you come back on the show, have a chat with me, it's been really fantastic, mate. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that too. And look, I appreciate your love and support, but sometimes I need doubters as well. So if there's any doubters out there, if there are people that think that we're not going to make this happen, let me know, okay? I need to feed off your energy sometime.
It's like feeding off this. I've talked about that on the show, how some people feed off love and some people feed off hate. And my theory is, if I can quickly share it, is my theory is love is the endurance side that you can feed off, and hate is the sprint. Hate is the one that gets you fired up in a particular moment, but it's not long lasting. You can't be fueled on hate for forever. So they're nice to use. Mate, what's next for you? You moved to Boston, you're all wrapped up? Yeah,
just moved to Boston, enjoying the city, get to know it, bring my kids up here, they'll get a feel for it, and I got 14-year-old twin girls, and they keep me busy. So just bring them up here and enjoy the city a little bit, and then just digging into work. We got a head start on 2023, I think, with the business, but I think I want to hit the ground running and really go in on this thing in 23 and make some real strides. So I'm excited, man. Again, I'm just so thankful to you for bringing me into this. You're really opened a new chapter in my life that I'm really thrilled to be part of this, man.
Well, mate, you're more than welcome, and I'm on the journey with you. So here we go. And like you said, head start on 2023. We've got big things happening. So everybody keep an eye out for Any Question. You can go to anyquestion.com, or you go Any Question on iOS or Android, and come and check us out. Brett, mate, thanks so much for your time and for just sharing your journey and all your knowledge, mate. It really has been fantastic. I appreciate you, mate.
All right, mate. Take care. Thanks a lot.
All right. And for everybody listening, you can find out more at bennettendurance.com/media. You can find the show notes there and timestamps and everything else. You can also go ask Brett any question at anyquestion.com/Brett Hawke. And he's already answered, I think, over 1,000 questions so far, but he's so responsive. If you've got any follow-up questions, go check him out there.
Thanks a lot for listening. If you enjoyed the show, your support would truly be appreciated. You can visit the Patreon page, or you can subscribe with your podcast app of choice. Don't miss the next episode, so subscribe and be notified. For show notes, if you want to know more, please visit bennettendurance.com. I'm Phil Liggett, and on behalf of Greg Bennett, here's to the next time, and I hope you will join Greg again very soon.